Menopause. Why aren't we talking about this? I'm on a mission that no woman should suffer in silence. I'm on a mission to increase awareness and create a community. I'm on a mission to make this M word mainstream. I'm on the menopause mission.
Everything starts somewhere, including menopause. And the transition to menopause can look differently for everyone, depending on your lived experience. The term for this is peri-menopause. Chloe, what is peri-menopause?
Peri actually means around. So perimenopause means around menopause. So it's the years leading up to your final period plus the year after.
Because you are not officially menopausal until you've gone one full year, 365 days, without a period. So that year after is still considered peri, but you won't know that until you've lived a year without your period.
Exactly.
Okay. And how do we know if we are going through perimenopause?
So the process of the transition can take several years. In fact, it can take up to 12 years for the whole process to complete. And it can start as early as 35.
So you're 35?
I turned 35 in March.
Okay.
And there are four stages. So you have very early perimenopause, early transition, late transition, and then late perimenopause.
Okay.
So very early perimenopause can start as early as 35, and it can last 2 to 5 years with no symptoms whatsoever, so you wouldn't even know.
Okay.
Then when you start getting into the early transition, this is when you start noticing some cycle irregularities. So first of all, a regular cycle is a cycle where you get a period every 25 to 35 days. So usually at the very beginning, we'll start having shorter cycles.
Okay.
Shorter cycles and heavier periods. You're going to find perimenopause starts with short cycles and heavy periods and ends with long cycles and light periods until eventually no period at all. Then we go into late transition. So late transition is when all of a sudden they start getting all those heavy periods that are flooding. We start getting breast tenderness, irritability, more PMS. And then the final stage, late menopause, is some of the vaginal dryness, the painful sex, the brain fog, the light periods, and eventually no period. And so each phase comes with its own hormonal profile.
Okay, so there's different things happening within us at each of those phases. So what would be happening hormonally in early perimenopause?
So the first thing that happens is you get low progesterone. In fact, perimenopause mirrors our first puberty. So sometimes it's called second puberty. So just like your first puberty, it's characterized by hormone profiles of high and fluctuating estrogen with low progesterone. Perimenopause has high fluctuating estrogen with low progesterone too. But in our first puberty, we slowly gain the progesterone. In our last final puberty, we lose the progesterone. So the first thing that starts to happen is the progesterone goes down. And that's the first thing that starts to cause like the heavy flooding periods that a lot of people are like, whoa, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Then when you go to late transition, this is what I call, or actually I shouldn't take credit, it's Dr. Geraldine Pryor calls the estrogen storm.
Okay.
So your body is trying to ovulate, but your ovaries are like, girl, I've done the work. I'm checking out. So
Peace out.
Exactly. So your brain is trying to recruit these ovaries, and we're having these high fluctuating estrogen levels. And again, this is why we have those heavy periods still, the brain fog, the memory loss, the insomnia, right? And then in the final stage, both estrogen and progesterone go down. Now, estrogen never goes down completely because we make some from our fat cells, but we are going to have low estrogen and progesterone like you had before you had your first period. And the low estrogen and the low progesterone is again where we have like the vaginal dryness, more of the brain fog, the possible painful sex, the light periods, the modulated immune system, like it's like a software update.
Sure is. Been there, done that. In the midst. Okay, so you had said something about estrogen and fat cells. So is that why there's weight gain? Is that one of the reasons why there's weight gain in women is because they don't have the estrogen, and so our fat cells are trying to hold on to it? Or
So in fact, at the final stage of perimenopause, the late perimenopause, insulin resistance is going to be something you want to keep your eye on. And so that's where that weird, out of nowhere belly fat starts to show up. So
Right.
one of the things that you can do is actually get your insulin tested and make sure that you keep on the insulin resistance. For example, with some strength training, making sure you're eating adequate protein, eating, within an hour of waking up. So it's actually because of the way that we use our insulin changes.
okay, so how do you know about all of this? What is it that you do?
Well, I teach people about their menstrual cycles. So I am a full spectrum fertility awareness educator and holistic reproductive health practitioner,
Holy
which is
man.
a mouthful.
How do you fit that on a business card?
I am crazy about the menstrual cycle. Yeah.
Okay. And how does one move in this direction? How did you get into it?
I find we teach what we need, right? So I was 23 and I was looking for a hormone-free birth control. And that's when I discovered the fertility awareness method, which is a method of contraception where you learn how to identify when you're fertile and when you're not. And you avoid getting sperm in your body when you're fertile. Plus, I wanted a job where I could work and earn money and travel at the same time. So I actually graduated from the Justice College International. I essentially tell people I have my master's in the menstrual cycle. But I graduated while I was living in Vietnam.
No way.
Yeah.
So there is a map behind us. You are a very well-traveled human.
I used to call myself the cycle-savvy globetrotter. And people would be like, oh, that's so cool. You ride a bike around the world? And I'm like, no, the menstrual cycle.
Cycle savvy globetrotter.
Yeah.
Wow. And so you graduated when you were in Vietnam from the Justice method. What is that?
Okay, so the Justice College International is an accredited, I'm proud to say that, accredited institution that teaches people how to become certified fertility awareness educators.
Okay.
So they teach the Justice method, but there's actually many different kinds of methods. So the Justice method is one kind, and it's the symptothermal kind. So I teach people how to chart their cervical mucus, their basal body temperature, and their cervical position so that they can understand the change in their menstrual cycles and then use this information to avoid pregnancy without hormonal contraception, to optimize their chances of getting pregnant, and to understand themselves and their health better, which is very important when you are perimenopausal. And the other beautiful thing about charting is it's an opportunity for you to learn discipline and self-trust. So when these symptoms are showing up and these changes are happening, you're not second guessing yourself. You know what's your variation of normal. You know something is changing.
And that is exactly how I knew. So full disclosure here, Chloe is my cousin, and I've watched her go through this entire journey, which has been incredible.
Yeah.
The way you've been working with women, empowering women. I too learned how to know my body. And so that was through the Justice method. So I was taking my temperature, knew how to check my cervical mucus and such. And so when I started to experience perimenopausal symptoms, it was so evident that there were shifts and changes because I knew exactly what was going on. Now, unfortunately, I had just started doing the work with you for a couple of years. And so I didn't get to experience, this long-term feeling of empowerment because when it changed, and then I was really, really confused. Like, what is going on here? But I did love the fact that I knew my body.
Yeah.
I knew my body. So what are some of the things that you work with clients on doing? What does that look like?
Right. So I teach in person and online, which helps with the cycle savvy globetrotting. And I teach people to chart their cycles. Yeah. So to go one step farther than just using a period app and paying attention to when you're bleeding, you actually chart the marvelous things that happen every single day. So one of my biggest pet peeves is when people say I'm on my cycle to refer to like their period, like, oh, I'm on my cycle. It's like, girl, you're on your cycle every day. That's just the period. That's just the menstrual phase. But there are actually 4 phases of your menstrual cycle. So I teach people how to get in tune with those phases on a daily basis. Yeah.
Okay. So what are the 4 phases of your menstrual cycle?
Well, you got your menstrual phase. So that's a
I don't
one.
anymore. No, I don't.
And then that's followed by your follicular phase,
Yeah.
your ovulatory phase, and your luteal phase. So I tell people I'm 4 people in one. So you get to know the 4 different Chloes in each of my, in my cycle.
Interesting. So what, describe those four different Chloes. What does that look like?
Right. Well, so first of all, my cervical mucus patterns change. So I use my toilet paper. Every single time I go to the bathroom, I fold my toilet paper into a nice, beautiful square, make a cervical mucus canvas, and I wipe from front to back. I pay attention to how I feel, what do I see, and if I can finger test anything. And if you feel a lubricative sensation when you wipe, or if you can pick something up off your toilet paper, then that's your cervical mucus and you're fertile and you're in your ovulatory phase. I also take my temperature every single day. And so first thing in the morning, it's like brushing your teeth. It's just something I do as part of my self-care routine. So I've been taking my temperature every morning for 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So I took, and don't get me wrong, I've had there's been days, maybe even like a cycle or 2 where I'm missing. But yeah, more or less, it's like, you forget to brush your teeth. Did I brush my teeth today? Just brush it tomorrow, right? Temperature is the same thing. So I take my temperature, I actually hold it there for 10 minutes with a glass thermometer under my arm, and then I plot it on my symptothermal chart. And these 2 signs help me to identify and confirm ovulation. By ovulating, that's how we get all of the benefits, both physically, emotionally, even spiritually, is through our ovulation. Our ovulatory hormones, estrogen and progesterone, which, as we were mentioning, are very important for the transition in perimenopause. They affect everything from your bone health to your breast health, your heart health, even your brain, which is why when you're experiencing changes in your estrogen and progesterone, you have an increased risk for osteoporosis. You have brain issues or brain fog, or because these are things that are affected by our hormones. Take hormonal birth control, for example. Did you know that when you take hormonal contraception, you're not ovulating? So it doesn't regulate your cycle. It actually shuts it down. And again, that's why when you're on hormonal birth control, sometimes it can feel like menopause. You have vaginal dryness. You have increased risk for osteoporosis. You've got some mental stuff going on you can't figure out. You have increased vaginal infections, because you shouldn't have to deal with that until you're going through perimenopause and menopause, but we are literally putting people into chemically induced menopause by giving them hormonal birth control.
So are you anti-birth control?
I love that you asked me that, because as a fertility awareness educator, a lot of people do think I'm anti-birth control, and that's not true. I just want people to understand what hormonal birth control does to their body so they can make an informed decision on whether or not they want to take hormonal contraception, what kind of hormonal contraception they want to take, and for how long, right? So hormonal contraception can be really useful for people who maybe don't have the time, resources, or energy to deal with the underlying cause of their symptoms. For example, endometriosis can be a super painful situation to be in, where your periods can take you off the map. And so, not to make a joke about endometriosis, it's a really serious thing, but hormonal birth control can really take that pain away. And so when you're ready to kind of address the immune dysfunction that's occurring with endometriosis, whether it's with diet and lifestyle, then you can go off the hormonal birth control and address it. But sometimes we don't have the resources and the time, and we just need the pain to go away. So hormonal birth control can be really useful. Sexual agency. What if you don't even have agency over your sex life and you don't want to get pregnant? Hormonal birth control is going to prevent you from ovulating, and you're not going to conceive. So 100%, I don't claim to understand or know everybody's story, and I think that hormonal birth control can be very useful in certain situations. Again, I just want people to know what it's doing. And if you're on hormonal birth control, make sure you're taking a multivitamin. It's like a vacuum that just sucks up all of your nutrients. So make sure you're replenishing those. Or just knowing that if you're all of a sudden experiencing gastrointestinal stuff or vaginal infections or brain fog, to clue in that, wait a second, this might be because of my hormonal birth control, and to change or to go off, right? Plus, I also think that years ago, it was really, you'd go on it as soon as you get your period. You'd go on it, and then you wouldn't go off of it until you wanted to conceive, right? So again, you've just lived your life in like a chemically induced menopause. Not to mention that just like the transition of perimenopause takes several years, it takes several years to mature. So just like, like the heavy painful periods are associated with perimenopause, for the same reason that when you first start your period at the beginning, you have heavy painful periods. And that's actually normal. So again, knowing what's normal and then what's normal for you is really important so you know how to best take care of yourself. So you have all of these like 13, 14-year-olds with heavy painful periods, and the doctors just immediately put them on the pill when they haven't even had a chance to mature their cycle yet. So knowing again that this is just going to be like your variation of normal for a little bit. And there's definitely things that you can do to mediate like the symptoms, but to just be aware and just to have knowledge. Whereas like even nowadays, I've been talking to the young people, and they're having sex, they're in a relationship, they go on hormonal birth control, but then when they're no longer like in that relationship, then they stop. So instead of this decade use of ovulation suppression, right, it's just like maybe for a period of time. And even that is like a huge win to get a break from the hormonal contraception.
Right. Why? Why is ovulation so important?
So I'm going to say it again because I just will never get sick of saying this, and that ovulation is your superpower.
Right.
So yes, we need to ovulate in order to conceive, right? Yep. Absolutely. The sperm meets the egg, and that's how we propagate our species, which of course is important. But regardless of whether you want to have babies or not, ovulation is an important part of your whole health.
Okay.
So we are the creatrix. Right? We embody the creative energy. That's what ovulation and our hormones, estrogen and progesterone, gift us. Right. But you get to choose how you use that creative power, that creative energy. And so when you don't suppress your ovulation and you actually get to like harness and benefit from that, you channel that energy into writing a book, into building a business, into your school projects, into a work project, whatever, right?
Right.
So your creativity, your personality is affected by your ovulation, by these estrogen and progesterone. Who you are as a person, what you love, what you don't like, what you want to do, what turns you on to life, again, is all associated with your ovulation. And we haven't even talked about the physical stuff, right? So again, your heart health, your breast health, your bone health, you see this? Whenever I post on Instagram, without a doubt, someone's like, Chloe, you have such gorgeous hair. And you know what I say to that? Maybe it's my menstrual cycle. It's ovulation, right? This is why. My hair, my skin, my nails are because I've been ovulating. So when you're on hormonal birth control, you are suppressing ovulation. So you're suppressing your estrogen and progesterone. In fact, the only way to make progesterone is to ovulate. So you're not even making progesterone. Whereas hormonal birth control have what I call like pseudo Frankenstein hormones. And they're similar enough that they like take up the receptors of our estrogen and progesterone in our body, but they are not similar enough to create the same picture. So it's like you're trying to put a puzzle together, and you can get the pieces to fit, but when you look back, it's like not the same picture, right?
Okay.
So my natural progesterone gives me this gorgeous hair and the skin and these nails. But the very short stint, I was on hormonal birth control for like a year. The very short stint, I started losing my hair. I had acne, right? I had like skin issues because the progestins, like levonorgestrel, are not the same as your natural progesterone. It's different. We want to ovulate because we want to make estrogen and progesterone.
Right.
When you ovulate and you don't conceive, then we get a period. And the whole thing starts again. So there's this whole movement where people say we don't need periods. In fact, did you know that the bleeding that you experience on hormonal birth control isn't even a period? No, it's just a withdrawal bleed. It's a marketing ploy. Like literally, they just put the fake period in the pill to make people comfortable about taking the pill. Because even though a lot of us, not me, I love my period, but a lot of people will complain about their periods, the pharmaceutical companies knew that if we didn't bleed once a month, we'd think something was wrong. Because intuitively, we know that that's important for us. So it's a fake period. Whoa. Yeah. So we do need periods. We need periods because we need to ovulate. And bringing it back to the perimenopause conversation, what you can do to have a smoother transition through perimenopause is to ovulate as many times as you can.
Right.
You can think of ovulation as like every time you ovulate, you're putting another coin in the bank of long-term health.
Okay. So we're going to move back into the conversation of perimenopause in regards to what can you do? What are some ways that you can maybe ease symptoms? What are some ways that you can transition a bit more smoothly? Like, this is the education portion that I wish I had had and that I want to offer to those, 35 and under embarking on this journey and going, it doesn't have to be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be, doom and gloom. There are things that one can do. For me, I've learned is managing stress levels would have most definitely helped with transition. Because now I'm coming from a place of retroactive rather than proactive, because of the fact that I was adrenally burnt out. It definitely exacerbated all of my symptoms going through perimenopause and menopause. What can they do?
Right. So first of all, you do have to understand that perimenopause is not a disease.
Yes.
So there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. It's a very natural part of aging. And it's not that you run out of eggs, which is what some people think. It's that your ovaries actually stop listening to your brain. They're like, listen, I'm done. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. So it's important to know what stage of perimenopause you're in to know how you can best support yourself.
Okay.
So in those very early stages, when we're still ovulating, maybe even quite regularly, but we're losing our progesterone, that's where the stress piece really does come in. So one of the ways that your body steals the progesterone is with stress. So it's called pregnenolone steal. And the main mother hormone that turns into progesterone also makes cortisol. Again, your body is so wise. It's always right. We just have to learn to listen to it and see what it wants and what it needs. But you're not broken. Nothing needs fixing. It's always taking care of you. And this is a great example of how wise your body is.
Okay, so low stress. What else? So progesterone is going down. What are some things that we can do?
So when we think of progesterone, we think of it as like the rest hormone. It's like your natural Valium or chill pill. So if you want to boost your progesterone levels, you want to think about how can I bring more restfulness into my life. So like looking at your sleep hygiene is also very important. When I talk about sleep hygiene, I'm talking about going to bed before 11 p.m., about turning those screens off an hour before you go to bed, about getting 7 to 9 hours of restful sleep. It's also very important to sleep in total darkness. So if you were to wake up in the middle of the night, you should be able to outstretch your hand and not see it. That's how you know it's dark enough. So if you have any light sources sneaking in, get those blackout blinds, right? Turn off that big red alarm clock or that big alarm clock, right? Actually, red light is okay. So if you do need some light, red light is not going to affect your hormones. And waking up and getting sunlight first thing in the morning. And moving your body throughout the day also impacts our sleep hygiene. And so by focusing on reducing your stress, prioritizing your sleep, right? These are great ways that we can take care of our progesterone. And then I always tell people like supplements are supplemental to like our diet and lifestyle choices. But there are supplements like magnesium, vitamin B6, all the Bs really are super important for our progesterone levels too. So you can look into that kind of stuff as well.
Okay. So that's early menopause.
Yeah, that's early transition, which brings us to late transition.
Okay.
This is that estrogen storm we were talking about, where you have high fluctuating estrogen levels that don't result into that peak and causes ovulation. So instead, you're like stuck in the wave. You're stuck in the estrogen storm. And so all of this excess estrogen, this is the way I love a good analogy. So think of estrogen as your proliferating hormone. So it's the hormone that causes new growth and proliferation. Whereas progesterone is the secretory hormone. It causes differentiation and maintenance. So think of your lawn in your backyard.
Okay.
Estrogen causes the lawn, the grass to grow. And if you left it unchecked, the grass would grow wildly, like, a jungle in your backyard. Progesterone is the lawnmower. So progesterone is what keeps that cell proliferation in check.
Okay.
This is why.
You just made me think of the dance that we used to do, Right?
Totally.
Never forget now. We'll never forget what progesterone. Progesterone is the
lawnmower.
It's the lawnmower.
We should choreograph something.
Okay. Okay, so when you don't have the lawnmower out, then your grass is growing.
Wildly out of control.
Okay.
Yep. So what we can do is, again, still focus on like ovulating, because the only way to get that lawnmower started is by ovulating.
Okay.
So that's why we want to support our ovulation. We want to support our body so that it can feel safe and nourished enough to ovulate. Okay,
All
that's
right.
another way we boost progesterone.
Yeah.
Right? Again, eating like nutrient-dense foods, right? Moving our body, all the good stuff. So some more things that we can do though, because when you have that excess estrogen, when you have that long growing out of control, we need to be helping our body metabolize it.
Okay.
Because again, it's a very normal process when we're aging that you're not going to ovulate as regularly and you're not going to get that lawnmower started.
Okay.
So we need to focus on estrogen metabolism.
Okay, so before we go into prevention, let's talk about how estrogen storm shows up.
Yeah.
What does that look like in the body? How does that feel?
Okay. So that's where, again, that heavy periods, the heavy painful periods, the breast tenderness. That's like, even now, like I'm like feeling myself. Where's my estrogen levels at, right?
Right.
So actually on that note, if you have painful breasts, like if you have a little bit of breast tenderness, is normal. Especially the kind that happens in your armpit and in the sides.
Okay.
So a good test is push on the front and in your nipple area. If that causes tenderness and that causes pain, that kind of tenderness is associated with excess estrogen.
Oh.
So pay attention to how your boobs feel.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so breast tenderness, heavier periods, what else? How does that show up? We're in the storm.
Yeah. The PMS, all of a sudden the irritability, the rage.
Been through this all, so this is just all familiar territory. For me, it's retrospective, but the goal is to be proactive and create some understanding here about how this can show up in the body. And so now, prevention. What are some things we can do during the storm, during the estrogen storm?
When you think estrogen, think you want to use it and then lose it.
Okay.
So how do we get it out?
Okay.
Number one, if you're not pooping every day, you 100% have excess estrogen in your body,
Okay.
because that's how we get it out. So we need to support our liver health, we need to support our gut health, and then we need to be pooping and eating lots of fiber so that we are removing it from our body.
Okay.
So like when you think of liver health stuff, sometimes we like to think about what can we put in our body, but actually the best way to support your liver is to stop adding so much things that it needs to process instead of processing the excess estrogen. So like alcohol. So reducing your alcohol intake is going to be really important in this time, because you don't want the liver to have to be working on that alcohol. You want to be working on the estrogen.
Right.
And again, your gut health, right? So those fermented foods like probiotics and the prebiotics, we just, those bone broths, we want to be making sure, like all of those ancestral recipes that grandma used to make, right?
What are some other foods that you can eat? So something that I drink a lot of, because I've heard it's super good for cleansing and for the liver, is lemon water. Really strong lemon water. Does that help? And is there anything else that can help?
Absolutely. Warm lemon water first thing in the morning is going to help that liver health for sure.
Okay.
And any bitter foods.
Right.
So like dandelion. I actually love to harvest dandelions in May and then make dandelion jam, dandelion. I was going to say dandelion wine, but that's going to not be so good with the alcohol advice I just gave you. So any bitter foods. If it's arugula, bitter foods are good for our liver. And then you want to eat cruciferous vegetables.
Okay.
So cruciferous vegetables have this plant substance in it called DIM and indole-3-carbinol, and this helps us to metabolize excess estrogen.
Okay.
So cruciferous vegetables are like kale, broccoli, cauliflower. It's really important that you cook these vegetables, even lightly steaming them, because it's easier to digest, but also it's very important for your thyroid health. So if you're someone you have a thyroid issue, you want to cook your cruciferous vegetables.
Yeah, I have huge difficulty eating broccoli and cauliflower, even when steamed and stuff. They're best in stews, where they're really, really broken down. So I just, it creates a lot of gas and such. So I was staying away from that stuff just naturally, because it was caused such a reaction in my body. But going when I was late perimenopausal, I was definitely going through the estrogen storm. There was very, very serious breast tenderness, lots of mood swings and such. But that wasn't necessarily a go-to because it was so hard to digest, right? So what are some alternates?
Well, and I love that you know that about yourself.
Yes.
Because that's like one of my biggest messages is like, get to know yourself, get to know your own body.
Yeah.
So another huge trend that's happening right now that I actually love is eating raw carrot salad every day. I mean, like you could just eat a good old raw carrot, or you can like get real fancy and, peel it, throw some salt and apple cider vinegar on it. But raw carrots help us to metabolize our excess estrogen.
Okay.
And then just as important as metabolizing the estrogen is to make sure that you don't add back in. So there's something called xenoestrogens. Xeno means foreign. So there's foreign estrogens that are hiding in the food we eat, the water we drink, the chemicals found in our body products, our bath products, our beauty products, our cleaning products.
Right.
So you want to keep those xenoestrogens out of your body. Now, it's literally in the air we're breathing. So it's impossible to eliminate it. That's why we want to focus on reducing it.
Right.
So whenever you are buying products to, again, clean your body, clean your house, or for, beauty reasons, look at the ingredient list.
Okay.
And keep the chemicals you can't pronounce, off your body and out of your home. One of my favorite tips is actually fragrance. So if it has fragrance, the word fragrance or parfum in it, avoid it. Don't even touch it. If you're looking for a hand soap or a dishwasher soap that smells like lemony, fresh, ginger, grapefruity, morning dew dawn, avoid it. Keep those scents out. Yeah.
Okay.
Essential oils are fine. So for example, I love a good Dr. Bronner's Castile soap scented with like lavender essential oil.
Right.
But all those synthetic scents are hormone disruptors and xenoestrogens waiting to cause havoc in your body.
So we just covered late transition, then we move into late peri-menopause. What's happening there?
So this is now when both your estrogen and progesterone are deficient.
Okay.
So this is when you want to start considering like, okay, now how do I, number one, just start to transition smoothly, because again, it's not a disease. It's normal that we start to lose these estrogen and progesterone. So finding a way to live in harmony with this new hormone profile that you have. Keeping in mind that, again, estrogen is never going to be zero because we make it from our fat cells. This is where somebody might consider like hormone replacement therapy.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you would just want to feel better, if you just want to feel better, then this is something to consider. Like maybe you remember the Sex and the City episode where Miranda is putting the yam on her face. Yeah, so the yam is estrogenic. So there's also something called phytoestrogens. So we just finished talking about xenoestrogens. Those are the chemicals found in our products. Phytoestrogens are like the foreign estrogens found in our plant substances and plant foods.
Okay.
Yam, soy products, tofu, right? Edamame beans. These are things that you'd find estrogenic properties in.
Okay.
So when you're in your estrogen storm,
Abort!
That's right.
Yes.
But now that your estrogen is like, okay, now you're not ovulating, you'll know you're in late perimenopause, because this is now you go like more than 60 days, you go months without ovulation.
Yeah.
Because you're identifying your ovulation because you're all good charters, right?
That's right.
Your periods come late, or much of it later. They're lighter, right? This and kind of where you're like, oh yeah, okay, this is it. And then all of a sudden you get like another bleeding event. That's when you're like in late. Okay. And this is when those symptoms that look like the brain fog, the vaginal dryness, the painful sex, like just the change in even how you feel, right? And how you think, and the insomnia. This is because estrogen and progesterone are going to be at their lowest now. Yeah. So now is when you eat the phytoestrogens.
Okay.
So this is now where you want like the tofu, you want the wild yam on your face, right? That's a very like natural beauty product, the wild yams.
Right.
Or, right, you can consider hormone replacement therapy.
Right. Which I have since done. And so that was something that just proved to be the best choice for myself, because I have gone through this experience so young. And so all of the side effects that can be a result of not having estrogen for such a prolonged time in my life, such as osteoporosis, heart disease, and diabetes, were some things that I didn't want to face, that I wanted to kind of avoid, obviously. But more so, it was the quality of life. So because of my adrenal burnout and experiencing the symptoms on such a high level, intensive level, it's definitely something that was an option for me to just bring that back, that quality of life, that feeling better, that takeover, because it did feel like it was a takeover, right? So those are the 4 phases, and we're all going to go through it. My lived experience, there were times where I wish I wasn't, for sure. But this is critical. This is critical to our health, right?
And I love that you said that, because a lot of the experiences, like the physical and emotional experiences that we have through this transition, most often aren't even due to perimenopause. It's that perimenopause is exacerbating the already underlying health condition that someone might have. So it's what we call a critical window of health. So if you go into this with a thyroid issue, with adrenal fatigue, with insulin resistance already, then the perimenopause is just going to exacerbate it.
Okay.
So in a way, it almost prepares you for menopause to be like, hey, get your ducks in a row. Like, you need to deal with this now. You put off way too much time.
It's the magnifying glass.
Yes. So another way that you can prepare for perimenopause and for a smoother transition into menopause is to address those things now. Get your hormone levels checked. Get your thyroid checked. Get your blood sugar levels checked. Get your cortisol level checked, right? Focus on the basics first, right? Your sleep hygiene, your diet, your exercise and movement, your relationships and community, your those chemical exposures you have going on, your spirituality. Like, even I talk about spirituality when I talk about women's health in all of my programs. So all of these things matter. Your play and recreation. Are you prioritizing your play? Are you having fun? Right?
I am now, but I wasn't.
But so focus on those things and focus on your basic health stuff, and get those other levels checked, get those lab hormones checked, so that you can get a handle on those underlying conditions that are sneaking up on you now, so they don't become such an issue when you're in your perimenopausal years.
Right.
Yeah.
Why do we go through perimenopause?
Do you know what's funny? We are one of the few mammals, I believe it's just humans and whales, that go through menopause. All the other mammals just die. When you stop being fertile, they just die. But we don't. We continue to live decades after we're no longer capable of propagating the species.
Wow.
So like 50 is the average age of menopause, but we could live until we're 100. So Laura Brydon, who's the author of the Hormone Repair Manual, everybody over 40 should own this book. She calls it the grandmother hypothesis.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're still very useful. So even though we can't continue to bear children, like a grandmother now takes care of her grandchildren, regardless of whether you've had children, if you're a grandmother or not, a woman who's no longer fertile is still very important to our community and to herself as well.
Right.
There's actually a study that was shown that the women in these years, they harvested more berries. We get more food. We give more. We have the time and the energy to offer back, to take care of our grandchildren or to our community, right?
Right.
And so, no, it's not just stop ovulating and then die, right?
Well, it's interesting because you look at villages that we would live in or tribes that we would have, and we would often see counsel in history from elders within the community, right? Rather than from our partners or our peers, which is definitely influencing our relationships or relationship breakdowns, I think, to some degree, because we're looking to access wisdom from those that are going through similar things or struggling with the same challenges at the same time, versus drawing upon incredible information from people have paved the way. People
Standing
have
on
these
their shoulders.
That's right.
Yeah,
Lived
I get you.
experience.
Totally.
Yeah. Which was one of the reasons why I wanted to create this series, is to pave the way, to provide support, community, resources, story, sharing, knowledge, information, education to anyone that is embarking on it, or in the midst of it, or has gone through it, so that we can create that hierarchy of knowledge and of sharing, right?
Yeah, and because kind of coming back to what we were talking about at the beginning, that everyone's lived experience is going to be different.
Yes.
Right? And so also knowing, what to expect or what is possible, and how emotionally how everyone experiences menopause, perimenopause, and menopause is going to be unique too. Some people really grieve their reproductive years. Maybe the person wanted to have children and they never did. Right? This can be like a devastating time. For others, it's like, oh, hell yeah, no more periods. I love this. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And everything in the middle is all normal, however you're feeling. But it is a lot of mindset too. And one of the things that I love to invite people to reframe their idea around what's happening with perimenopause and menopause is it's just like we were talking about how it mirrors our first puberty and how we went from like that innocent child to then getting like these big boobs and these periods, and all of a sudden men are looking at us weird, and you're like, wait a second, I can have a baby, and like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Well,
I never got the boobs.
Oh.
Okay, Jesus, speak for yourself. That we obviously don't carry that same gene. Okay, whatever. Thanks, Mom.
So in the same way that our second puberty or perimenopause mirrors that, instead it's our return to our wildness of childhood, of girlhood. So we go back to like what it felt like before puberty, where we don't really care what people think about us. We don't care about like the boys or the girls or whoever is like looking at us. We're just playing in the dirt. We're doing our things. We've got our own projects going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I do, and I feel that. I definitely feel that. And I feel that more as well as I talk more about it and I know more about it, because I feel that empowerment. And I think that's a big piece of it. When one knows what is going on with their body, it is so incredibly empowering. I mean, this is the work you live and breathe in every single day, right? Menopause itself. So we've gotten through the peri, we were in late perimenopause, now we're in menopause. What does that look like? What's happening?
So again, it's that return to girlhood where you're no longer ovulating. So you're not getting those ebbs and flows of estrogen and progesterone anymore. So eventually it will become a softer landing, because the chaos is the perimenopause.
Right.
The chaos is the transition. And again, it's going to take everyone's going to have their own unique journey back to that soft landing. But the menopause is eventually where, again, you'll feel like you were like that before puberty. So you don't experience the highs and lows of your natural estrogen and progesterone anymore. But there's going to be a lot of recalibrating of your brain, of your immune system, your insulin, right? So you have to get through that change, and then you get your soft landing at the end, eventually. We medicalize women's bodies, and that what we're experiencing is wrong and we need to control it and fix it. But that's not true, right? It's not true. Just like menopause is a natural part of a woman's life. We don't need to medicalize it away. We don't need to hide it from shame. We need to acknowledge it, celebrate it, and talk more openly about it.
That's right. That's right. And that's what we're doing here. We're making the M word mainstream.